Hi everyone. This is a video about ways of showing space in a two-dimensional composition other than simply Renaissance perspective. So, meaning 1-point, 2-point, 3-point perspective. So I'm going to read through the handout that I posted for you and go through the examples and then maybe show some photos that I took over different time periods that I thought had ways of showing space. So overlapping, shapes that overlap others are read as being closer to the viewer. Size diminution, shapes that are smaller appear further back in the composition. Linear perspective, shapes put into a system, 1-point, 2-point, 3-point, etc., developed in the European Renaissance that have a horizon line and vanishing points. Parallel lines receding in a spatial grid is linear perspective. Vertical placement, shapes further up on the picture plane appear further away from the viewer. Atmospheric perspective, shapes far away in the pictorial space of the composition are more blurry, less distinct, less detailed. So the examples that I show are artworks that show some of these ways of showing space. So this was by August Mack, who was a German expressionist, and it shows overlapping and vertical placement. The next, it was done by a peer of mine in graduate school, William Kluba, and it shows size diminution and vertical placement. Notice that these, whatever they are, little flat pieces of land, whatever they are, flat things, they get smaller as they move backwards, but they're also moving up the picture plane. Canaletto, who was a painter in the early 1900s, overlapping 1-point perspective, size diminution, and vertical placement. Finally, we have true Renaissance perspective in this painting by Bellini, overlapping 1-point perspective, size diminution, and vertical placement. So the 1-point perspective, we can see that the wood on the trellis move back to a vanishing point if you were to follow the top and the bottom rail. Overlapping, 1-point perspective, size diminution, and vertical placement. An ancient Chinese painting, notice the vertical placement, and in this, we also realize that the Chinese at that time were not using linear perspective. They weren't using size diminution, which goes along with linear perspective, because the figures at the top are the same size as the figures at the bottom, and the landforms also. So we were meant to read things that were placed higher on the picture plane as being further away. We still use vertical placement, but we use it in conjunction with size diminution and linear perspective. This is Turner, who is a British impressionist, and it shows atmospheric perspective and vertical placement. So this is where things get blurry in the background or less distinct, less detailed. And finally, 3-point perspective, my students tell me there's lines moving backwards this way, lines moving to the left, backwards, and even lines that move down to a third vanishing point. So size diminution and vertical placement.